My mom has been acting cold and distant since my dad died. My aunt told me that she lost her mind. When my father passed, I lost both of my parents. Not sooner had my father been laid to rest did my mother retreat into the shadow of her former self. She once used to light up every room she was in. With chatter, good energy, she used to be the first one to wake up, singing and waking up the whole household, and I used to hate it when she did that. But now I miss it. She would take care of everyone, make sure that our days were planned well, and would be home when we came home from work or school. She never took a day off, was never sick, and was scarcely sad. I can count on my hands the number of times that she's been sad or even angry. But my father's death had a toll on her, and it's like all the goodness that was in her was sucked out. What was left was a shell, cold and cruel, and she refused to rise out of her bed in the first couple of weeks. She did not want to eat or talk to anyone, and only my little brother Eli could get a word out to her. I recognized that she was grieving, as we were all, so my aunt, who's my father's sister, came to the house to help out as much as she could. She had a pretty busy life and could not always be there, but she tried her hardest. But my mother did not get better with time, as do most people who fall into depression when healing. Instead, she became even more hollow. She left her bed, started to bathe a bit more, and ate, but she was just going through the motions. I could tell that it would be a while before she got better, and then she started to get angry and very critical of me, something that she had never done before. Nothing I did could please her, and she always had an insult ready for me. I took it all, for I understood that every essence of what made herself was gone. We all knew that she loved Father and that I looked like him, and every time she saw me, she would get upset or say very cruel words to me. She would tell me that I had to try harder at taking care of myself, and she could die any time. It was difficult staying with her. My aunt offered to take us in if it became too much, but I didn't want to leave her. I chose to stay with her, and that was until the incident happened that would lead us to become estranged from our mother. My mother's birthday was coming up, so I planned something for her. I hoped it would cheer her up because I missed her smile and her laughter, and I invited some neighbors and friends, and when we revealed the surprise to her, she was in tears, and she cracked a little smile. We had some cake and some food that I cooked and spent time with each other for a while. She was strangely more talkative than before, very animated and energetic. My brother Eli did a little fist bump when we realized that the plan was working. However, her mood quickly became erratic. She sat in the love seat where she used to sit with Father and started speaking to someone who was not there, which was a bit alarming for us. I asked her who she was even talking to. Well, when she looked at me, I did not see my mom. She told me to leave her alone, and I asked her to rejoin the party, and that's when she lost it. She stood up, slapped me, telling me that everything I did sucked. As I was standing there unsure of what just happened, she went up behind me. There was some screaming, so I turned around and she was taking chunks of the cake and throwing it at people while telling them to leave. They left, leaving myself, my aunt Eli, and my mom. My aunt asked her if she was taking her antidepressants, and she told her to shut up. She did not know anything, and what followed was hours of Mom snapping at us. Long after Aunt left, she was snapping, calling us names, and it was like the Mom I used to know did not exist anymore, like I was living with some sort of monster. Later that night, I woke up to her in my room, and she was on the floor, and she was sobbing. She barely said anything, and the tears just kept on falling down her face. She said she could not do this any longer, and everything was just so loud and vivid. I took it to mean that it was too soon for her to be around people. Something was wrong with her, and I suspected it was PTSD, since my father passed in my mom's arms. Even after he was long gone, she begged him to come back with such conviction that one would think she could command God to bring him back. She reminded me of ancient lore that I read of people who could never accept the death of their soulmates. She was struggling and lashing out at us, and she needed help, like my aunt had been suggesting. When my aunt suggested that grandmother should live with us, or that Mom should be taken somewhere where she can get help, I said no to that. I did not want to give up on her just like that, but now I had to think about Eli. That day when she was throwing everyone out, she had also thrown cake at Eli. She did not see that her son and, not a threat to her. Her mind was fighting her. Something was not right, and I needed to think about my brother and take care of him. I knew deep down that she wanted that. My mother slept in my bed that night, and that was the last time that we had a good moment. The next day, my aunt told me that we were going to move in with her. Grandmother was also going to come back into town and stay with Mom, and they were also going to hire someone to help Grandmother take care of Mom. Aunt Aaliyah said that this was much better than sending her away to some strange place. I believed her and agreed to move in with her, and I thought it would be temporary and my mother would be fine. It's been 3 months now, and she has gotten worse. I've been to see her, and she has gone completely mental. I did not recognize the person who's there. Now, there's a problem that my aunt and grandmother are faced with. My dad left a will of his estate to my mom, and the estate needs to be taken care of. My grandmother says that my mom is not in any position to take care of the estate or us. So now she and her aunt say that they want to be mine and Eli's legal guardian. I don't know if I want that. I think that they're being too quick to think that my mom will not recover. She has good days like today, and today her mind was a bit clearer, and we talked as if it was old time again. But when I came back from lunch, she was back to being absent. So now I don't know if I should fight harder or get them to wait. I don't want them to be in the custody of my grandmother. She's a bit of a strange woman. Even Eli does not like her. My aunt is not bad, but she's not motherly at all. I've been thinking, and I really want to get a second opinion. The problem is that my aunt and grandmother do not want it. They say they don't want to confirm to the people that something's wrong with my mother. So I asked why that would be so bad, and she's in a bad space and needs help. I was told that I'm just 16 years of age. I don't know how adulthood works. I want a second opinion. I don't want my mom to lose what little she has left of my dad, and what if grandmother decides to sell the house and move us to the countryside? She much prefers the country to the city and has been expressing that she wants to go back. I want them to give my mother a chance. I know that we need a second opinion, but I'm only 16, and I cannot get that done for her. I'm torn, and I just feel like, how my mom was in my dad's final moments, begging for some different outcome and unable to accept the truth. Update number 1. Something is going on, but I think that I might be overreacting, and I hope that if I am overreacting, for if I am not, then I might be in big trouble. My aunt and my grandmother have gotten control of a lot of things, including my brother and me. They're preparing to go to court and get custody of us and my father's estate. I think it's a conspiracy. They don't want my mother to inherit anything. My grandmother has always been very vocal about how she does not like my mom. Now she's supposedly taking care of her. She also limited my visits with my mother, saying that she's in danger to myself and to herself. She sent me pictures of my mother with bruises, and she told me that she was doing it to herself. Something tells me this is not right. My mother has always been of sound mind. She would not do that to herself. And I've also been reading into PTSD, and it's rare for it to get as far as it's getting with my mother. Then there's my aunt, who is supposedly responsible for talking to the doctor and making sure my mother gets her medication. I snooped into her room the other day. Something was telling me that something was off about the meds that she was giving my mom. I managed to get the name of the medicine, and I searched online but could not find anything useful. However, I remembered Tybout, my cousin. I met him many years ago when he was in medical school, and I knew that he's in his residency, so I sent him an email. I have no idea if he remembers me or will even help me out. What if I'm wrong in suspecting them of nothing, but how would that explain the way they sneak around all the time? The way they never want to update me on my mom's condition or tell me that she's been diagnosed with something. When I suggested a second opinion, I was told that I knew nothing. When we got home, my aunt told me that my brother, we should be grateful that she was willing to take care of us. She said if she wanted to, she could send me and my brother into the foster care system, and there was nothing that we could do about it. She said that she never planned on having kids, but here we are. We better be grateful that she's kind, because this is a far cry from how she acted when I was staying with my mom. Maybe they're not doing anything suspicious, but there's no mistaking the fact that they have their eyes on my father's fortune. What can I do? I'm 16. If I was 18, then I would have fought to get everything in my name. Update number 2. Hey guys, I feel sick to my stomach and I've not been able to stop feeling so queasy. They do say that you should be careful what you look for you might not like what you find. I wish that I had thought about that before searching for the truth, and it would have helped to mentally prepare myself before I went and looked into the family's dark secret. I found out such things that make me want to crawl into my skin and never come out. True evil walks this earth. It's a good thing that I found out about this so early because now I can do something about it. I'm not alone. There's someone who will help me. Together we will make sure that my aunt and grandmother do not continue these atrocities. So I realized that I'm being quite vague, so let me start with where we ended off. After my aunt threatened to give us to foster care, I realized that something big was going on in that house. I just needed eyes and ears that would allow me to see what was happening. The next time I visit my grandmother, I had a Russian doll with me. I told her that my mother loved to collect them as they were a huge part of my heritage, and I asked her if I could give it to her. Maybe it would help her remember. Grandma said that she would not allow me to see her because she was too tired and in a bad state. I told her it's fine, but I needed her to just give it to her. I said that I did not know how much time we had with my mom due to her lucid state, and my grandmother said that it was a good thing that I cared so much about my mom. She then gave me a list of chores to do, and then she went into the room to give my mom the doll. She used that day to make me run errands, all her errands. She barely spoke a word to me, except to direct me on how to do the chores. She then asked me how I would feel about moving to the countryside. I was surprised and asked why I would do that. The city was where my friends are. She told me that soon the judge would come to a decision about me and my brother, and it could happen that one of us would be given to my aunt and the other to my grandmother. I then asked her if it was not true that my aunt was going to send us to a foster home. She laughed and said that she would not do that. We were all that remained of my father. She then started to speak about how she wished my parents had given us to her a long time ago, for she tended to get lonely at the farm alone, and that was the most conversation I got from her. When she took her afternoon nap, I knew that I had a chance to sneak upstairs without her knowledge. I hoped to speak to Mom to see if I could find out what they were doing to her. I knew my mom was not mad. They were making her mad, and I had no proof. So I took the key from my grandmother when she was asleep and went upstairs. I found my mom sleeping, and she looked tired. She must have passed out from exhaustion. I checked in the drawers and found all the pills that my aunt bought. In addition to that, I found laxatives and some pills that can cause a person discomfort. Then there was a drawer that had something, but I could not open it. I gave up and went to inspect my mom. She was lying in the bed with her whole body covered. So, as not to wake her, I gently removed the blanket, and I gasped. She had welts, cuts all over her body, and I've never noticed this before, for my grandmother never let me see her for long. She also had what appeared to be burns on her, and I screamed. I could not keep anything in. I was horrified, and my grandmother came running upstairs and found me red-handed. She pulled me by the hair and dragged me downstairs, and she asked me if I was crazy. She told me never to enter the room, but I did. I told her that my mother was not hurting herself. She was the one who was hurting her. She looked at me gravely and told me that if I told anyone, I would be disowned without a cent. She would not take custody of me or take care of me at all. Well, she then told me not dare to tell anyone, and even if I did, no one would believe the words of a 16-year-old over her. She told me that soon they were going to get the estate and have my mother locked up. If I dare to tell anyone, then they would make sure to teach me a lesson. I'm not 5 years old anymore, nor do I respond to threats. But for mine and Eli's sake, I acted very shook and said that I would not say a word. When I go back home from my aunt, she acted very, very different. Yeah, she must have knew what happened. So she was a bit harsher towards me and my brother, calling us ungrateful and other things. I told my brother to be brave, for everything was going to be okay. That's because that morning my cousin told me that he had information about those pills. He gave me the details and told me what I needed to do to prove that they were harming my mom. Now I wait. I'm so nervous, I just hope this will work. Update number 3. My 17th birthday was a very interesting one. It was later that week, and it was so close to the deadline, and by some miracle, my grandmother and aunt's cases kept on getting postponed by the judge. They got a date for next week and were confident that they would get everything. I begged them to have a birthday for me, my last birthday at the house, and they agreed to have a birthday for me in today's the day. I'm turning 17 and my life will never be the same for me. I told them to invite all the family members near and far, and they also invited Tybalt, my cousin from my mother's side. Everyone was there, and the family spared no expenses. I guess they did not mind splashing my dad's money because I knew it had to do with them showing off and them being nice to me on my birthday. That was the perfect setting, of course, for me to expose them. I could not get a specialist to get a second opinion on Mom. I could not contest a will due to my age, and they were the only living direct relatives that my dad had. I knew that once they got the fortune, my brother and I would be reliant on them forever. So then I decided to expose them at the party. I said that I had a speech to make and was given the stage, and I said that it had been a difficult year, with the passing of my father and my mom's failing health. I was deeply troubled by both and had only had my aunt and grandmother there for me. They beamed, super proud of themselves, thinking that they would get away with it, and I then said that there was one thing I wanted to get off my chest, as this was probably my last day in the house if my grandmother managed to sell it. I then said that my grandmother and aunt were giving my mother pills to make her lose her mind, and I had proof. Everyone collectively gasped, asking me what was going on. Meanwhile, the pair was pale as sheets. My aunt was the first to recover and go up to me. She dragged me off the stage, but Tybalt stopped her. He told me that he tested the pills that were in my mother's drawer, and they were known to harm people. It was clear that they were mentally abusing my mom. My grandmother then said that there was no such thing because I was lying, so I said, okay, let's go upstairs to my mother's room and I would show them. The whole family quickly ran upstairs, and my grandmother was forced to unlock the door. I went straight to the drawer to open it, but found that it was empty. I was more than embarrassed, flabbergasted even. Everyone left the room, and I was standing with my grandmother, and she told me that she was going to send me to my aunt's and deal with me later. So I asked her, where is my mother? For the room's empty, and she smiled and said my mom was where she belonged. Update number 4. My grandmother gave me a chance to go downstairs and apologize, thank everyone for my gifts, and then go home. Tybalt was crestfallen and tried to give me an encouraging look, but that would not help. Aunt Aaliyah was busy apologizing to everyone about my behavior and saying that the grief was what made me like this. Meanwhile, my grandmother was giving me a triumphant look because she won. There was no evidence of her doings. She then said that it was time for the slideshow about my life, as was tradition, and then I needed to go home and rest. I said before that I needed to make a toast to everyone. We toasted, and then the video was played, and as you might have guessed, the video that was played for the whole family was not of me as I grew up over the years. It was a video of my grandmother forcing pills down my mother's throat, of her hurting my mother, whipping her, cutting her, everything that you would think of she did. Sometimes my aunt even joined in. There was no audio, but hey, it's clear what was happening. All of this was recorded using that Russian doll I set up in my mother's room. It was hard for me to watch the torture and make a video of it, but it was necessary. So my grandmother ran to turn off the TV, but it was too late. Everybody was looking at her and aunt with the most disgusting looks on their face, and Tybalt then asked them where my mom was. They refused to say, so he said it's best for them to tell the police, and everyone agreed that the cops had to be called because, well, what they did was wrong. Within 20 minutes, the cops were there, and I gave them all the evidence that happened, and the two of them were taken away, kicking and screaming. I guess we'll hear tomorrow if they're to be released or not. My brother and I are safe with Tybalt at his hotel, and he got us another room. I finally got a chance to ask him why he helped me. He told me that since my mom was his aunt, she helped him when his parents could not, and it turns out that she helped him with money to go to medical school. He was always grateful for her and swore that he would do anything to repay her. When he got my message with my suspicions, he was not shocked. His mom told him that her sister was acting a bit weird and not like herself. He praised me for being so quick, thinking on my feet, for if I did not, no one would have known the truth about Grandma and my aunt. Update number 5. I just wanted to update you on what happened to them in the end. It's now 3 months after what happened, and I've been very busy at home with Mom. Yes, my mom came back home last week after weeks of getting treated. I was finally able to get back to her custody, something that I've wanted for ages. We've still not spoken about what she went through, and I think it's better if we just let it lie for now. But what I'm thankful for is that the family came together to make sure that she got justice. First off, they were charged with attempted murder due to my mom's extensive injuries, and those injuries were not only physical but psychological as well. This helped to prove to the judge that my mom was not mentally ill and could take care of my father's estate. Therefore, they lost both the case of the inheritance as well as custody. Our custody was temporarily given to my mother's sister because she moved into the house for a couple months and took care of us while my mother was recovering. Once she was found out of the mental institute, she was properly treated for the physical abuse she incurred against my grandmother. I went to see her every day, hoping that she would feel better and be more like the mom that I knew. The doctors found traces of medicine in her body that was not supposed to be there. If used for the wrong causes, it would be lethal to one's mind. Unfortunately, my mother was not unscathed. It's estimated that she'll still have some fogginess in her brain from time to time. Despite all this, she's expected to make a full recovery. As for my aunt and grandmother, karma came for them. They managed to get bail, but for a very hefty price. However, people found out what they did, so they were harassed. My aunt could not go to work or even leave the house without being called names. Everybody was absolutely disgusted by their actions and wanted to make them pay. Someone must have wanted them to pay so much because they did not wait for the law to deal with them. Instead, my aunt was tracked down and beaten. She was then fed some pills, and she managed to get to the hospital quickly and her life was saved. Grandmother tightened security around aunt's apartment, thinking it would save her, but the person was able to get to my grandmother, who suffered a far worse fate than aunt. Since my aunt was in the hospital and no one was visiting them, no one noticed that my grandmother was not leaving the home. We had no idea. She was being held there, hostage in that apartment and being tortured by some unknown person. She was there for 2 days before he let her go and allowed her to seek medical treatment. Let us just say that she was not the same person after that. I cannot go into graphic detail of what he did to her, but her eyes were soulless after it happened. So, then they had to move to an undisclosed location while their trial carried on, and that's where they're at now. I'll never know who this vigilante was, but I'm hoping that he taught them a good lesson on how to treat people. Update number 6. Finally, it's done. I have some sort of closure now. The trial was very draining mentally and physically. Despite all the evidence that was presented, they pleaded not guilty. My grandmother claimed that she only wanted to cure my mother of whatever happened to her when my father left. She said that she might have used some, unconventional methods, but she had very good intentions. On the other hand, my aunt claimed that she was looking out for me and Eli, and she feared that since my mother was not sound of mind, she would spend all of my inheritance and would be left with nothing. Then, they had the audacity to ask me to forgive them in court, as that would lessen their sentence. They said that my father was a kind-hearted man, and they thought I had similar traits. In response to them, I testified against them in court. The defense tried to disarm me, but I stuck to the truth, as my mother told me to, and thanks to that, they were found guilty on the charges of attempted murder. For that, they got 12 years each, with a chance at parole. I would have preferred that they got locked up and the keys were thrown away, but hey, 12 years will do. The whole family has supported us during the whole ordeal. Not even one person has sympathy for them. All of them say that even when they come out of jail, they were not going to help them. They deserve to rot there, and you know what? I agree with the family. On the bright side, my mother's doing much better. She's back to being her normal, cheerful self, as normal as she can be. She gets tired a lot easier and is not always cheerful, but she's of sound mind. She's been taking such good care of my brother, and I've been able to help her as much as I can. I'm thinking of picking a college that's nearby, so I'll be able to help out next year. That's the least I can do for her. At least now we'll be able to focus on healing on my father's sudden death. I feel that he was with us as we tried to get justice for what happened to Mom. I can't even begin to imagine what would happen if those two had never been exposed. I would have lost both parents this year and be left to take care of my little brother alone. So, I do appreciate both of them a lot more now after all that happened.